You are listening to a free version of the Majority Report with Sam Steeder. To support this show and get another 15 minutes of daily program, go to majority.fm, please.
The Majority Report with Sam Steeder, where every day's Casual Friday. That means Monday is Casual Monday, Tuesday, Casual Tuesday, Wednesday, Casual Hump Day, Thursday, Casual Thurs, that's what we call it, and Friday, Casual Shabbat. The Majority Report with Sam Steeder.
It is Friday, July 26, 2019. My name is Sam Steeder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, from the Uber blog, Hullabaloo, Digby will be joining us. Heather Parton, for those of you who read her column in Salon. Also on the program today, Anthony Fantano from the Needle Drop will be here to give us an update on the scandal involving Mr. Rocky. And also perhaps to attempt to ever so slightly, broaden my musical horizons. Also on the program...
Maybe explain Ace of Base to you.
That's what I was going to say.
Also on the program today, Senate report issued hours after Republicans halt election security legislation show that the Russians were able to access voting data and rolls in all 50 states in 2016. Meanwhile, Democrats inch closer to impeachment. Automakers, the 4 top ones in the world, sidestep Donald Trump and make a deal with California to lower emissions than are allowed by the Trump administration. Meanwhile, Trump and Barr bring back the federal death penalty. Because, of course. Trump's slush fund to pay farmers $16 billion to make up for their trade losses. And Susan Collins may resign if we continue to hurt her fifis.
Dark money.
CNN and MSNBC plan climate debates. Looks like the DNC will capitulate. There are 2 big House Republican retirements announced over the past 24 hours. The Office of Refugee Resettlement says that thousands of immigrant children may be detained indefinitely. Federal Trade Commission lets Facebook off with a slap. And Ilhan Omar's potential Republican challenger may also face potential shoplifting charges. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, folks. Thank you for joining us. For those of you who are watching the program on YouTube, you'll see that we have a couple of esteemed guests here with us. There you go, waving from the gallery that we've set up.
All the way from Chicago. Josh from Chicago.
There you go, proving that he's from Chicago. Thank you for joining us. Quite a week. Ladies and gentlemen, next week, of course, we will be covering the debates live on Tuesday and Wednesday night. We'll be doing so through our audio stream. We will also be doing so, I think, through Twitch, right? I'm not 100% sure if we're going to do Twitch or YouTube. but we'll see. We'll figure it out one way or another. You'll be
Other
able to
people
watch.
got away with YouTube last time.
People
so.
did get away with YouTube last time, and this time it's CNN, and they seem to be a little bit less concerned. But we'll see. And one way or another, we will in fact stream the debate, and we will give you the opportunity to watch it along with us. There will be two debates, of course. The first night we're going to see. I think it's the first night is Bernie and Warren will be on stage together, and then really a cavalcade of people who will be dropping out shortly after the debate. On the other night, it'll be Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Cory Booker, and that is looking like there'll be some. Certainly the lead up between Booker and Biden. Yes.
Biden is, they're both right about each other, which is fun.
Yes.
Mutually assured destruction.
That's why that debate could actually be very fun. So you can join us and watch that debate with us. Don't forget, you can become a member of the Majority Report by going to jointhemajorityreport.com, jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you get extra content, and you support this program. And, of course, if you have any comments on the AM Quickie, please let us know. If you at majorityreporters@gmail.com, we're still ways off before setting that out on its own in its own feed. Let's get to this. There was a TPUSA summit. This is the Turning Points USA. The Turning Points is the organization that Charlie Kirk heads. It has had multiple scandals involving explicit racism practiced by some of its chapters. It's all just the chapters. I mean, I think there's maybe one or two guys nationally. That's Charlie Kirk and whoever the Koch brothers have decided to install next to him to make sure he doesn't run off with the money. Candace Owens has since gone on her own. And I don't know if that was because she was too pro-Hitler or...
There was some upset even among TPUSA chapters about her nationalism comments.
I see. Okay.
Regarding Hitler.
Now, were they upset that she had walked back those nationalism comments or that she had actually said them in the first place?
One chapter was upset she said them in the first place.
Okay.
I think they're a bit of a satellite, though.
Oh,
If it means
kinda
like
racist to
protect
me.
your people and build
Right.
roads, it's great.
It's hard to know where exactly.
Also, we mentioned the Koch brothers, but Foster Freeze is really the turning point.
Foster Freeze, right. Yes, exactly. I'm sorry. Apologies. And of course, Foster Freeze, also considered one of the last liberals, which is why Dave Rubin now works for these guys. Nevertheless, Donald Trump showed up. Now, did he actually
Isaiah
show
Berlin.
He shows up at the end of this
up? Oh, he
clip.
shows up at the end of this clip. Okay. So first what we're going to see is the video, right?
We'll play some clips from it, but there's about a 13-minute intro video that's sort of North Korea-like highlight reel of Donald Trump.
And everyone there is pretty excited to see this. Here it is. These are the MAGA hats. Pause it. You know what? Sorry about this, but that countdown and the grainy feel of the you know what that reminds me of?
Triumph of Will or whatever that.
Well,
Lee
yes.
Riefenstahl thing is.
This is yes. It reminds me of two other things. One, it reminds me of The Man in the High Castle.
Year
right?
zero, baby.
And also, I think I've told this story. In 2002, I traveled to Cuba with my then wife to shoot her documentary. And there was a statue of Martí, who was considered like a Cuban forefather, like a George Washington. And Martí had his hand up. Statue was down from the U.S., I don't know if they called it embassy at the time, but whatever, the U.S. intersect or whatever it was. And Martí had his hand up, like sort of like basically saying to the United States, stop. And in his hand, he held a boy that represented, I thought from a distance, like Cuban youth, like the future of Cuba. And it was a copper statue. So there was green all over it. I mean, it looked like it had been there for years. Marti was a figure from the late 1800s. And the base of it was made out of cement, but like half of it was sort of washed away, fully degraded. And that boy was Elian Gonzalez. So the statue could not have been more than 2 or 3 years old at that point. And so they created this effect that it had been there forever, that it was timeless. And I found that fascinating in terms of its propaganda value.
I think the Confederate statues had a similar thing going on, maybe, in America. Like, they tried to make them look like they've been there forever.
On some level, but I mean, they've been there for 70 years.
I'm
not talking like 3 years, and this was built distressed.
By the way, though, Elian Gonzalez is grown and sexy now.
Well, that may also be the case, but nevertheless, that's why you put that effect on the front of this video to make it seem like it is they're trying to place him with basically FDR. Like when you think of the times you see that in front of a reel, it immediately evokes a certain era. And they're trying to make him look like Churchill.
I'm stablemates with Churchill.
I was never in a wheelchair. Fake news.
Donald Trump was and is a child of New York. Born and raised in the borough of Queens to a life of hard-earned privilege. He was the fourth of 5 children born to a
hard-earned privilege?
Wow.
There you go.
In the borough of Queens to a life of hard-earned privilege. He was the fourth of 5 children born to a Scottish immigrant mother, Mary, and a housing developer father, Fred.
Housing developer.
Mark on his son.
My father was great. Good salesman. Good builder. He loved to build houses. He was a good builder. I learned so much from him. And he was a great guy, a lovely guy. I loved my father. He described his mother, Mary,
he did horrible things to me,
as the perfect
but I still loved
housewife.
him.
His father, Fred,
horrible,
was a millionaire real
thing.
estate developer. The Trump patriarch has been described as a human machine.
Would say, mine's bigger than yours, even when we took showers together. And then I learned how to do business that way.
He was a human machine
That ambition
who
was
just continually abused me.
in young Donald's DNA.
He apparently loved military school. He liked the kind of out front, I think, competitiveness of it. There were so many different ways that you could excel and get medals.
I loved looking around at all these poor saps who were actually going to have to go into the army.
He was socially popular with men
and I wasn't. What's that?
This is the part we don't want to talk over.
Okay. Let's keep. We'll keep quiet here. Sorry.
Prevalent in young Donald's DNA.
He apparently loved military school. He liked the kind of out front, I think, competitiveness of it. There were so many different ways that you could excel and get medals and ribbons. Donald Trump thrived, rising in rank, and he was socially popular with men and women. He also gravitated towards sports, or rather, winning in sports.
I think we saw enough. This goes on to show clips of him beating up the other people in the Republican presidential race.
We're not going to have a little dose of that. That was a lot.
If we were to have Trump,
amazing.
We might
Watch
as well
me humiliate Jeb Bush.
Amazing how well that holds up.
But so he comes out, and there are. Well, I mean, let's watch it. Nice car.
Rap video.
It's like a rap video.
Is that Skrillex? So good.
Oh, that's why they have 2 presidential seals, because one is animated.
Thanks for my rap video.
Well done,
Peak capitalist realism.
Hashtag free Rocky, y'all.
And there's Donald Trump walking next to a seal, and you can see...
That's as much as you can see on this clip, and then we'll switch to the
I
still
can
image.
only think of sassy Trump when I see him in this kind of mode, just like literally sitting there, like saying, like, "Thank you, thank you." He looks so appreciative.
So apparently, someone at Turning Points USA, either purposely or probably just sloppily, found a second President of the United States seal that turned out to be created by this guy, Charles Lizotte. He is a 46-year-old graphic designer. He threw it together after the 2016 presidential election. He used to be a Republican, voted for George W. Bush. I think it's going to take maybe this seal does it, where it showed up. But he made this seal. It mocks President Trump because the eagle has in his hand instead of arrows, he has golf clubs. He replaced the United States Latin symbol, that is, or slogan, logo, motto, I should say, with apparently what is a Spanish insult. And
does that say "es un pendejo"?
I don't know what it says, but I think so.
And I hope so.
It replaced the two-headed eagle imperial bird logo, or I should say, it included a two-headed imperial bird, which apparently is from the Russian coat of arms, and apparently, like, the Washington Post realized, like, hey, wait a second, that's a fake logo. Nobody noticed the golf clubs, which is really shocking. Like, I can't see the logo.
Golf clubs, that's just like an update of the seal for Trump's personality.
Yeah, can we actually make that the seal, though?
I like that, actually. That works.
Fire that.
We're joking, but I think we should do that.
So no one at Turning Points USA caught it. And
Patriots.
Oh, I guess instead of e pluribus unum, it says 45 es un titier, which is 45 is a puppet.
It's all Russia.
No
material.
puppet. Yeah.
No puppet. You're the puppet.
And
you're the puppet. The one who redid the seal. You're the puppet. You're the puppet.
So apparently, Turning Points USA said that the incident was a last-minute oversight, the result of a quick online search to find a second high-resolution photo of the presidential seal to place behind Trump. Said the mistake was unacceptable. And
you're fired.
Well,
we've all been there.
Yes. And we did let the individual go, the spokesman said. I don't think it was malicious intent, but nevertheless... There you go. That's the way I like that. That's the way. But nevertheless, we dropped the axe on this guy. We do not allow for mistakes that don't involve racism in this organization. If you're going to make a mistake, it better be racist or you're fired. Folks, can you describe your look in one word? How would you describe, well, I know. I mean, I'm looking around here. It's pretty straightforward how to describe the looks around here.
Summer goth, cat lady.
Right.
Energy.
That's what I would have said. That's more than one word. But and then I would just go from, well, I think Brendan actually is probably the best dresser in here. He has a look. What do you call that?
In high school, we used to call it
contemporary casual.
We used to call it trier in high school.
Apples and oranges, Sam.
Yeah, I mean, Matt has gamer. Michael's is just basically Adidas sponsorship.
That's mainly true, but you're not.
But however you dress,
beautiful in our own way.
However you dress, except for maybe Michael, because I don't know if they just have exclusively Adidas.
Right,
wear.
I need to stay within my sponsorship agreement.
Stitch Fix has the expert personal stylist that can help you look your best. Stitch Fix is an online personal styling service that delivers your favorite clothing brands right to your door. Get started. Just go to stitchfix.com/majority. You answer some questions about your preferred style. Your personal shopper will ship you a box of clothes, shoes, accessories. There's no commitment required. You only pay for what you keep. Shipping, exchanges, returns, always free. Super easy. Plus, the $20 styling fee is automatically applied toward anything you keep from your box. So you get a credit. So it doesn't cost you anything to have someone who basically can ask you important questions and get you the clothes that you'll like. You'll never have to think about looking good again with Stitch Fix. Personally, for me, this is perfect because I cannot get...
Hi, Stitch Fix.
I
Can't
honestly,
leave my home.
like... It
Can
is.
you help me?
There is. I don't like to go shopping. I don't. Well, look, you are one to be talking about during a fashion segment.
Well, I absolutely am one to be. If you understood fashion, you know I would be one to be talking.
Adidas only. That's the way I roll.
Keep it simple. No bumps in the road.
Right. Well, I like to wear something that, adults wear. And eventually, when you grow up, Michael, you would too. And this is good because I don't know, frankly, what adults wear.
Tune in for TMBS on Tuesday. That's when you can find out what adults wear.
I don't know what adults wear. And this has been incredibly helpful for me. But you can get started today at stitchfix.com/majority. Get an extra 25% off when you keep everything in your box. That's stitchfix.com/majority. Stitchfix.com/majority. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're talking to Digby. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. Ladies and gentlemen, it's Friday. In fact, it's Friday, July 26th, which I had marked in my calendar to play this song.
Are you ready for some Digby? Yeah. Are you ready for some Digby? Yeah.
Not a lot of words, but it gets the point across. Digby, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me, Sam. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday indeed. I think we should move to 3-day weekends in this era, frankly.
For it. Oh, God, yes.
But I don't know that we could. I mean, we'd have to get Trump to sign off on it. I think he would. But
we all need executive time.
Yes, exactly. So, all right, just give me, I mean, we did live coverage of both hearings, the judicial and the intelligence. Obviously, Robert Mueller, not so spry, although I'm not 100% convinced that part of that wasn't, part of the plan on some level, just to not answer a lot of questions on purpose. But give me your sense of what we heard over the course of those, 6 hours.
Well, I mean, I just getting the Mueller performance part out of the way, because it's really not the most important thing. I think he probably is out of practice, obviously rusty, and he seemed to obviously to be a reluctant witness. And I don't think it was just because he, was afraid that he wouldn't be able to answer the questions or that he was out of it. It's because he truly believes that it's out of place for a prosecutor to do that kind of analysis in public. There was a lot of criticism of Ken Starr for doing that, what he did back in the 90s. There was a lot of criticism of Jim Comey for doing what he did. The idea of prosecutors or, law enforcement officials in his capacity going, and talking about a case that he doesn't bring charges on, I think may have just been something he just didn't want to do. And it was clear that he was reluctant. So I agree with you. I think some of it probably was that he was out of practice and not as spry as you put it. But I think that there was also a strong sense that he just did not want to be involved in this whole thing. And it would truly, in a real the oversight hearings, you would have the actual witnesses, so Don McGahn and people like that, come in. But, of course, the White House was stonewalling. So they ended up, the prosecutor ends up being the voice of the investigation. That's not how it should be done, but it's sort of what the Democrats have been stuck with so far. Having said that,
well, wait. Let me just stop there too for a second, because I feel compelled also to say this. I think that Mueller behaved cowardly. I mean, frankly,
Me too.
I think. I mean, with all that said, any physical infirmities or reluctance, like this guy went up there, and Comey had the same disease, as far as I'm concerned. They think they know better than even their own policies that they have promoted for an extended period of time. In part of this comes out the most in the Sean Maloney questioning of him as to why he did not subpoena the president to sit down for an interview. He claimed that he didn't do that because of time constraints on the investigation. Well, everyone would have known that it was the Trump administration's fault if he would not sit down for an interview. That would be public. It would be in the courts. And secondly, he had said throughout the report that it was crucial to have the testimony of the subject, right? That it seriously undermined the ability to get to the bottom of this. But then he also said to Sean Maloney, which I think was was crucial and completely underreported, that they make a decision where they weigh the necessity to interview the subject against how much evidence they have already accumulated. And if they find that the evidence that they've already accumulated would be enough for a conviction, was sufficient, I think the word he used, then they would make the decision not to pursue the subpoena because of time constraints. So in other words, he found that there was sufficient evidence to indict for obstruction of justice, but the Office of Legal Counsel says you cannot criminally indict a sitting president. Okay, all well and good right there, but he states in the first 3 pages of the document of the report that there are constitutional means to do that. Well, he should have referred it to the Congress. He should have actually taken that affirmative step and said, I've found there's sufficient evidence to indict. There's only one way to indict a sitting president, and that is Congress doing it. So I refer it to you. He should have used those words. I refer it to you. And he didn't. And had he done it, the cowardly Democrats would have picked up the ball. And so they're both cowards as far as I'm concerned. But go ahead. Continue.
Well, I don't disagree with that at all. And I honestly think that, look, we're in an emergency situation here. I mean, which his report lays out. And, you and I and everybody listening knows there's way more even beyond the report that is, an astonishing abuse of power by the President of the United States, ineptitude, traitorous behavior. I mean, it goes on and on, even beyond what Mueller was looking at. So the idea that someone in his position had the chance to go before the Congress, and he's no longer a member of the government, he doesn't work for the Department of Justice. He could have easily said, if he didn't want to put that in the report itself because he was still an employee and he didn't feel like he could refer something to Congress, he most certainly could have done it as a private citizen. Yes, I intended this to be referred to Congress. I assumed that Congress would be the body that would take this evidence and follow it to its natural conclusion. He could have said that. He didn't. And you're absolutely right. It's like he and Jim Comey are two sides of the same coin. This idea that, look, we are here the protectors of the institution. Well, the institutions are broken. They don't work anymore, and largely because people like Comey and Mueller, both of whom I'm not criticizing them as people of integrity or honesty or whatever, but these people are just they're blinded. They're not seeing what's happening. I mean, look at William Barr. He's a Trump, basically a Trump henchman now, working solely on behalf of protecting the president and the presidency from encroachments from the Congress. So this is a national emergency, and people like Mueller and Comey are sitting around talking about, well, look, I'm above all that. This is all
well, that's right.
Politics.
They're just protecting. They're
the right
protecting
thing,
themselves, and they're pretending like they're protecting the realm. That's what's going on there.
And they're not. They're actually degrading what little is left of it by refusing to just kind of be straightforward. It's all in there. It was all in the Mueller report. Those of us who've read it, and I did slog through it, it's in there. It's obvious what happened. I mean, we know that. And, I think that just getting back to the hearings themselves, that Mueller in the first hearing before the Judiciary Committee, he, again, because of what we just talked about, he had made a decision that he was not going to make that statement that he believed that Trump had obstructed justice. Well, it's obvious to a 10-year-old that Trump obstructed justice, and we saw it in real time anyway. On his Twitter feed, he's dangling pardons and calling Michael Cohen a rat. I mean, this was no mystery about the obstruction. There were some new facts in the report, but basically Trump was obstructing justice in plain sight the entire time. We knew that, firing Comey being the most obvious and first step in the obstruction case. But it was the second hearing that was far more interesting, and I think that Mueller was a little bit more forthcoming, not so much about Trump's, about his involvement, but about what actually happened. And I suspect, and this is just me making an assumption, that he was much more engaged in that part of the investigation, that the obstruction side, that probably his staff had put together that part of the report and put together all the details. We all knew it, and maybe Mueller just said, yeah, of course he is. This guy's been obstructing justice. Put it in the report. But that the Russia part of it, the election interference, the national security implications, and most interesting to me, Mueller was forthcoming on a subject I actually didn't expect him to be, which was the idea that Trump was subject to blackmail, that he had been compromised. He didn't say it outright because he couldn't, actually. That's a classified counterintelligence investigation that he claimed is ongoing, which I, was surprised to hear him say that. I don't know if he actually knows that, but he said it. And the fact that he, under questioning from Adam Schiff, basically agreed that anybody in Trump's position who was, it may not have been illegal for him to be doing business in Moscow during the campaign and lying about it, but it sure as hell did compromise him. The same way it compromised Michael Flynn to be lying, publicly about talking to the Russian ambassador and, having the Russians know that he was talking to the Russian ambassador. That's compromise. That is the kind of thing that happens. And we don't even know the extent of Trump's business dealings in Russia or any of that stuff. And it turns out that Mueller didn't investigate a lot of that stuff. He didn't look into the money laundering. He didn't look into the finances. I mean, he admitted all that. So that subject is still out there. And when we look at where we are right now, staring down the 2020 election and the revelation of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence yesterday, that the extent of Russian interference in 2016 is far greater than anybody knew until yesterday. I mean, 50 states, all 50 states had been probed by this Russian, cyber hacking unit. This is a very big deal. And that is the part of the Mueller hearing, what we heard there, Trump being compromised, the idea that this, is a much more sophisticated and ongoing operation than we realized. And he's apparently, unless Bill Barr has, ended the counterintelligence investigation, which wouldn't surprise me. But now we know that this has been an ongoing thing, and that we are, we're very close to another election that is not going to be any more secure, and that the Republicans are blocking all the, any kind of election security legislation, basically saying, we're welcome. Vlad, we're with you. Bring it on. It's fine. Do it again. And anybody else who wants to help us, we're here to let it happen.
All right. Well, yeah. All right. So let me go back a little bit and just, I think, and we'll get to the report in a second. But I think my sense was too is that it wasn't so much that Mueller wasn't involved in the obstruction, from my mind, because it was weird that he brought his essentially lieutenant, as it were, for the intel stuff versus the Judicial Committee, right? Like, he didn't bring him for both. He just brought him for the intel. And I think it was that the judiciary was more about impeachment and criminality, right? And I think that's where he was like, I'm not going to say a word about that.
Right.
But in my capacity as an investigator about counterterrorism issues, which are not actionable in any way, I guess, right? Like there's no, I don't think he finds any type of impeachment fodder in the second hearing. And I think he felt much more free to talk. Like, he was literally more glib. He looked like he was not as befuddled. Maybe, I don't know, maybe they shot him with adrenaline, or maybe it was just like, oh, now I don't have to be worried about every word I say. There was one point, and I can't remember which hearing it was in, where he was being asked about that question of constitutional mechanisms. And it was a congresswoman, and I can't remember her name, but she was saying, what are those constitutional mechanisms? And he said, well, there's some. And she says, are you saying, it sounds to me like you're saying that it's impeachment, that impeachment is that constitutional method. And is that what he said? He said, well, it was the one that you just mentioned.
Like, he wouldn't say the word.
Yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy because he didn't want any footage on television of the word impeachment coming out of his mouth. Which there would have been. There would have been a question, what is those other constitutional methodologies? And he would have said impeachment, and it would have been all over television, as well it should be. And it just seems to me that it's not his responsibility to do that. Like, he thinks he's not being a political actor, but I'm sorry. When you say that there's other constitutional mechanisms, and someone says you, what are they? And you won't say what they are, I got news for you, Chief. You're being political. And so I don't know. I found that incredibly annoying. But and let's be clear about what the Russians, let me put it this way. What we know the report says, because it's heavily redacted. And this is the report that came out in the Senate yesterday, that Russian hackers infiltrated local or state voting databases in every one of the 50 states. And as far as we know, there is no evidence that they changed any votes. I have not heard the same blanket assertion as to whether they simply took people off the voting rolls, which, as we know, is a fairly effective tactic. If you do it in the right place, there's a reason why we have X percentage less voting machines in districts where people are heavily African American because they tend to vote, for Democrats, et cetera, et cetera. We don't know that. My understanding is it's unlikely they did anything because at the time they would have been very concerned about American pushback, that they were probing and that they knew that had they done anything more active, in that regard, it would have been considered extremely belligerent. And I think they may have anticipated, like, chances are we're going to have Hillary Clinton in office, and, who knows? But we don't have that same checks and balances this time around, right? Like, now maybe they would prefer, I don't know, Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders or Pete Buttigieg to be president as opposed to Trump. But we don't know. I mean, frankly, I'm looking out there and I want to put a call out to any foreign adversary who thinks that they can get in there and flip the switch for, Bernie or Warren. I would take either one if they're going to do it by cheating. Let's just let them choose whichever they feel more comfortable with. I don't know. Could we get France or Sweden to do that? Would one of the Nordic countries do that? But this is a big problem, and the Republicans specifically quashed legislation to deal with it.
Well, it's clear that, I don't know how you can look at this any other way at this point. The Republicans literally are welcoming and actually want the election interference. It's obvious. McConnell actually said it. He said, well, the Democrats believe that there will be a political benefit to, he said, use the words, political benefit to securing our elections. Yeah, because it would make them fair and free. And as a result, it would be of benefit to Democrats. He said the quiet part out loud, right?
Right.
that if there are free and fair elections in the United States of America, the Republicans are in a minority and they will lose. And that is actually, and they have discovered that this particular method of suppressing the vote, if that's what they're up to, maybe changing votes, whatever, is likely to benefit them at least as long as Donald Trump is running, right? I think that it's, as you say, other countries could attempt to do this, but we do know one country that is, has attempted to do it. And one of the things in this SSCI report was that while they don't think that they were probing these election systems to actually do anything in 2016 for the reasons that you cited, that, they assumed that would be considered a very hostile act of aggression under the Democratic administration and subsequent administration if Hillary had won. But they got a lot of information, which, there is a...
They mapped out essentially the networks.
What they need to do the next time. You know what I mean? They got a lot. They got a lot of information. And what we have done to prevent it in 2020 is basically nothing. They have not done any of the things. There's been some money spent. They've done a few things, but truly, if you are looking at this as sort of a cyber warfare kind of situation, we're not on a cyber warfare footing at all. They basically have just thrown up their hands, and McConnell is giving away the game. He's just saying we're not going to do anything about it because it will benefit Democrats to have a free and fair election. The end, goodbye. We don't need to know any more than that, which, by the way, is one reason why I am so agitated about the idea that the Democrats refuse to do impeachment so far, and, who knows, but that they're refusing to hold impeachment hearings, put all this information out there, not having Mueller go, alluding, vaguely to what might be seen, but really put it out there, because
it's a country that rhymes with Usha.
Yeah, and we have no guarantee at this point. Really don't have a guarantee that their solution to the Trump problem, i.e. winning in 2020, and then, we can put this national nightmare behind us. We have no guarantee that that's going to work, because we have all this election interference that they're doing nothing about. You can't rely on that to be they need to pull out all the stops to stop Trump. Whether or not they could get a conviction or not, they have to put out everything possible in order to reveal for the public what's going on. There has to be a massive, turnout in 2020 to try and, overcome whatever these machinations are. And we have no guarantee of having free and fair elections in the United States at the moment. None. In fact, it's pretty clear we're not going to have them. And the idea that the Democrats are going, well, we just need to beat them at the ballot box, and then we'll be, and then it will be back to normal. That's insane. And it's not, the idea that they think any of that's going to work, or that they don't need to throw everything they have at this situation, that they need to get this stuff out there and let the American people know that we are in this national emergency that goes way beyond Trump's Twitter feed. This is not just about Trump's horrible personality. I mean, that's bad, but this is about something much, much more serious. I mean, at the end of that hearing, the intelligence hearing, not the Judiciary Committee, even with all of Mueller's stumbling and bumbling, I was a little breathless because I'm going, okay, this is what had Mueller agitated. Even he was willing to go, slightly beyond his own sense of rectitude here to say something serious. He said, it's still happening as we sit here. And, and Christopher Wray, the FBI director, had said the same thing the day before. And yet we're just, carrying on. And Nancy Pelosi going, well, we just need to beat him, and I've got to protect my people in the Trump in the Trump districts that, won in 2018. Right. And, this is all, and I'm going, what, they're as deluded in their own way, in my view, as those people who are watching Fox News, propaganda is. In their own way, they're presenting a reality that is not reality. And who is presenting the reality? I mean, it's like, this is crazy. I mean, you see it on TV a little bit, people like you and me. There's some, Twitter and bloggers and, people like that. But they're, institutionally, the country is not, I don't think that most people are aware of just how serious this thing is. I mean, I don't mean to sound hysterical, but this is a pretty big deal. I mean, 50 states. And this came out of the Senate Select Committee run by Richard Burr, who, maybe he's one of the slightly better Republicans, but he's not exactly he's not just an homage by any means.
Right.
So,
right. I
think that he signed off on this is meaningful.
Right. The narrative that somehow all of this stuff about Russia is, and look, I think I was never under the sense that Donald Trump was some type of Manchurian candidate.
No.
But the narrative that this stuff about Russia was simply cooked up to create, I mean, this would be a pretty big, well bought into lie that Russia did this stuff. If you have Republicans and Democrats in the Senate all agreeing, and, the intel agencies, I mean, this is pretty big stuff. This is, I mean, to believe that is, I think, akin to, you're in Bilderberger territory.
Yeah.
And that, there's a one world government, and we're all just here, and we don't realize it, but we're all just basically batteries for some type of major weather machine that is going to be unleashed. And I'm not quite sure where it goes from there. But want to be clear about something, too. You don't need to get into 50 states worth of voter data to impact an election. Every person who works in, electoral politics with some depth of understanding will tell you there is literally 5 states and probably, 10 counties, if that many, where to eliminate 10% of the eligible voters, you've won an election, right? I mean, it's probably, the numbers are probably smaller than that, and it's probably less sophisticated than that. I mean, we saw it. 3 states, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. I'm not suggesting that's what was done there. We see the Republicans do that voter suppression in public, right? The voter ID law could very well have made the difference. I'm not saying that Wisconsin should have been that close or whatever, but the fact of the matter is we have a highly polarized society. In 2000, George Bush won the election by 500 votes. And 500 votes out of 200 million people who voted. And so we have a highly polarized country. And the idea that you could take 5 or 10,000 people off the voting rolls in a state like Wisconsin because of voter ID, that's why you institute voter ID if you're a Republican. That's why you do it if you're in Michigan. That's why you put polling places in difficult to reach places for people living in poverty, or perhaps living or struggling in the middle class. And so these techniques, they don't have to just exist on their own. You can have an inside and an outside game on this stuff, right?
Right.
I mean, we'll do 5% of the work publicly. You do 5% of the work, privately, and there we go. We just won 3 key states, 5 key states, whatever it is. And I'm not suggesting that this happened in 2016, but if they probed it and they don't feel that there's the same deterrence, the idea that it would, that the president, let's say, would be upset about it. The idea that this is beyond, Donald Trump, et cetera, and these folks, I think is just, I don't understand how anyone could contemplate that. I mean, these people are, they're 2-bit criminals. If we're lucky, they're 2-bit.
Well, exactly. And, in fact, last night on Chris Hayes, Walter Dellinger, the former Solicitor General, great legal expert and, academic, he made the point, and, as much as Mueller didn't want to go toward impeachment, what he talked about in the intelligence side of it, and that Adam Schiff, who I thought did an excellent job, by the way, I should at least point that out. I think he really prosecuted the intelligence case quite intelligently, to the extent that they could even reveal what they know, right? I mean, there's a lot that's classified, right, and that we don't know about. But, what he pointed out was all these things. The idea that Trump was compromised, and we know he was because of the Trump Tower, Moscow, maybe other reasons that he's compromised, and the fact that they have refused, he and the Republicans have refused to do anything about this particular problem. He pointed out that there doesn't need to be a technical violation of the federal criminal code in order to institute impeachment or to convict on a president, impeach and then convict him. And he said, and this really struck me, he said that a president who consciously fails to defend the U.S. against a foreign military intelligence attack for his political benefit is surely impeachable. That has nothing to do with what happened in 2016. It has nothing to do with the Mueller report, per se. It has nothing to do with what Trump did or, failed to do, or his welcoming the help or any of that stuff. It has to do with what he has done as president and what he has not done as president. He is failing his oath in every way by completely denying that it's as if Pearl Harbor happened and Franklin Roosevelt came out and said, no, it didn't happen. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But here, this is an interesting time. I don't want to phrase it that way. I want to talk about, you're making the case, you're making the civic, ethical, I don't want to say moral necessarily, but the civic and ethical good government case as to why Donald Trump should be impeached. And it seems to me that what I find just sort of stunning, and let's just take the conservatives out of this, right? Because it really has nothing to do with the Republicans at this point or the conservatives. Just broadly speaking, half the country is not involved in this conversation, it seems to me, because ultimately, if the Democrats impeach, then they should leverage it against the Republicans in the Senate. But leave that aside for the moment. The argument about impeachment is happening between the center through to the left in this country, and it seems to me like, I was just watching, I like his work, but Doug Henwood on Twitter. Doug Henwood on Twitter and Nancy Pelosi seem to be in the exact same place.
Yep.
Which is, it's irrelevant whether there's a civic reason to impeach this guy. The concept of holding anybody to account is irrelevant. We shouldn't impeach him because we should focus on getting elected. Now, I think Henwood and Pelosi probably have different perspectives on how to get elected and whatnot, but that element seems to be completely taken out of the equation, which I think is wrong. I think we should hold people to account. I think the reason why we had, Iran-Contra was because we didn't hold Nixon properly to account, frankly. Even after impeaching him, he was allowed to be walked. And I think we see this on and on and on. Casper Weinberger, pardoned. We see the savings and loan. Everybody washes their hands. I mean, I think these things keep happening because there's no accountability, and that's problematic. But it also occurs to me that politically speaking, even if you don't want to look at that, this is complete malfeasance because we have already seen what they're going to attempt to do between now and the election time. And from a purely political perspective, you should do this because it's going to damage Republicans and the president. And then from a good government perspective, you can alert people to legislation that we need to protect our elections. And I would argue it will prevent the Trump administration from exerting effort on stuff like rolling back the federal death penalty, or exerting, we're going to put. They're not going to have as much time to spend in the White House figuring out how they can make a legal argument to close down asylum. If it's all hands on deck, we've got to deal with impeachment hearings. I mean, this is just on every single perspective you could have about the question of impeachment at this point, civically, politically, and in terms of like material benefit for people or preventing material harm to people. Each of those boxes are checked off.
I could not agree with you more. And to me, the political argument is exactly what you say, and it's obvious. Look, Donald Trump and his people, by the way, they are obsessed with this stuff. If they impeach, he will be impeded in moving forward with his agenda and with, Stephen Miller's agenda and the rest of these, these far right and otherwise, horrifying people he's got in his cabinet. War, anything. They need to do everything they can to stop him. And I will say, and impeachment is part of that. It's not, we need to pass messaging bills that show that we really care. Well, I think everybody knows that. We've got presidential candidates out there every day talking about all their plans and what the Democrats want to do if they gain power. This is not a conversation that isn't happening in America.
Plus, we're done with the messaging bills. They've done all the ones that Nancy Pelosi wants to do more messaging bills than put Medicare for all out there. She won't do that. We're done.
No.
They've
I know.
It's over. They've
put their agenda out there. We know exactly what the House Democrats believe in and stand for. So great. Okay, we've done that. But I got to tell you, I don't think that 2018 happened because everybody was just really hoping that they'd pass a bunch of messaging bills. That was not why those Trump districts flipped either. That is not the reason. They flipped because they wanted the Democrats, they wanted something to stop him, to at the very least, put some kind of a roadblock up to his agenda and stop things like, we came one vote shy of repealing Obamacare, putting, 20 million people suddenly without any health care and nothing to replace it. People understood that. And they wanted him stopped. So they wanted his agenda stopped and they wanted him stopped. And the idea that somehow or another doing anything, they want to act as if Trump doesn't exist. They think, well, we just really don't need to give him all this attention. Well, I'm sorry. He's the president of the United States. There's nothing else you can do to, kind of distract people from Donald Trump with a bunch of messaging bills that aren't going to be signed by anybody. And Mitch McConnell just sits there kind of chuckling in the corner going, yeah, go ahead, enjoy yourselves, play over in the corner, kids, because we know what's really happening. And again, I go back to this idea that what the Democrats are basically doing is kind of indicating that they're in a bubble and they're ignoring the actual political reality in this country, which is exactly what you just said. And we don't have any choice. It's not as if they can't create their own reality in which, I don't know, it's, Obama's going to be president and we're going to say, yes, we can, and golly, hope and change. That'd be nice, but we're in a different world, and we can't do that. So they need to be coldly rational about doing absolutely everything they can to stop Donald Trump, and it goes beyond just not passing a bill to repeal Obamacare. This is about doing everything they can to hold him accountable, put this stuff up forward. And I don't even understand this messaging stuff because, like I said, we have a full conversation going on. Next week, we're going to be watching debates with the president. They're not going to be debating impeachment. I'm not even sure it'll come up. It didn't in the first one. They're going to be talking about all the stuff they want to do. It's not as if nobody knows what the Democrats stand for. We're having a huge conversation about how far left we're going to go, what the big plans are that Republicans are calling everybody socialists. I mean, that conversation is happening. And Nancy Pelosi needs to understand that's not her job at the moment. There's a bunch of candidates out there that are doing that job. She has a different job. She has an institutional responsibility.
I think it's a perfectly rational strategy. But guess what? We can now look at it and assess it, and it's not working. And I want to make one more point, and then we'll have to go. We are only 3/4 of the way through this administration. The people who are there now, who are still there, right? We've lost 50 people from the Trump administration. There's very few actual cabinet members, who are not acting. The people who are there now are actually the competent ones. They're the ones who have figured out how to wade through this without stepping the tripwires. And I think Bill Barr is one of the most dangerous people that we could imagine in our government now, because he is obviously smart. He obviously knows where, who he's playing against, right? Like he ran circles around whatever Robert Mueller thought that, Robert Mueller had this notion of him as Lancelot, walking down there, being some type of quasi deity. And I'm not going to deign to dirty my fingers at all and believe in the faithfulness of the Department of Justice. Bill Barr lied the hell out of his thing. And Mueller told us that in not so many words 2 days ago. And Bill Barr is going to do whatever. He is a henchman, but he just also happens to be a very smart one who got in there with a lot of connections and obviously a lot of credibility on the right. And there is a lot of dangerous things that can happen, I think, over the next year and a half that people are underestimating. Because you now have a lunatic madman, who is the president, who now has somebody who can execute what he wants. Yeah. And there's no, sort of like Don McGahns in there who are like, hey, wait a second, there could be a time after this, and I don't want to be in jail or on the outskirts of it. There is now. I think we're at like. It's time for us to just act like there's no tomorrow in this administration. And I think it's a very dangerous time. And I think Nancy Pelosi is completely, and I just want to add, everything I say about Nancy Pelosi goes doubly for Chuck Schumer, because I'm not convinced that Nancy Pelosi, the person that she thinks that she needs to convince to get in gear is Chuck Schumer. Like, I'm not convinced that Nancy Pelosi isn't afraid that she's going to lose 15 votes from the Democratic caucus in impeachment, which would be devastating. And I understand that would be devastating for the Democrats in the House. We all presume that she's afraid of Republicans saying no. Of course, they're going to say no. The question is, would there be 10 or 15 Democratic senators who vote against impeachment? And that would, I think, sink the Democratic majority in the House. So,
we saw it on the border bill. It actually happened. So
yes,
we know it's possible.
Yes,
Absolutely.
indeed. And I think that is a real concern. But Digby, we will have, sadly, more time to talk about this, or maybe happily more time to talk about this in the future. As always, I appreciate it. Folks, go check out what Heather is writing over at Salon, as well as Hullabaloo. Thanks again, Heather. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Sam. Have a great weekend.
Okay, you too.
Bye.
Bye-bye. What did I do there with that? There we go. All right, folks. I guess I'm a little bit worked up about this. But I really think this is an extremely dangerous period of time. And I think, with the idea of As much as this was about Nancy Pelosi, I think Chuck Schumer is really, could very well be the biggest problem that we have. The single biggest problem. Because if Chuck Schumer was out there, I'll just remind you, if Chuck Schumer felt he had all the votes and was willing to whip all the votes in the Senate, has he said a word about impeachment? This guy. Charlie Pierce wrote a piece about Schumer as well. I hope we start to see more of this. Schumer is horrible. And I don't know what we do about it.
In June 18th, Schumer wants to wait months down the road on impeachment decision.
And that was?
June 18th.
Oh, June 18th. Okay. Of this year.
Of this year.
Okay. June 18th, 2019. He wants to wait months down the road for impeachment. I think it's also conceivable because, we all assume, right, that Mitch McConnell would not bring this up for a vote in the Senate. I don't think that's the case. Mitch McConnell knows he's going to get every single Republican vote. I think he would probably try and make the Democrats vote for it. And it's quite possible that Chuck Schumer is so pathetic, so weak, that he can't even get his own Democratic caucus to vote for impeachment against this president. It's a real concern. He certainly screwed over Nancy Pelosi in that border bill, without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Well, we know this about the centrist Democrats. They're going to be making compromises and accommodations right up until the second they get the wall.
What compromise? He's not even getting anything.
Yeah, I guess compromise is a strong word for that.
It's not even, it's like compromise implies that at least there's some type of negotiation going on. Chuck Schumer is just laying down, and I don't know that it's ideological, although maybe it's just, maybe you could tie a broad-based sort of argument that people who lack an ideology just enter into politics exclusively for their own power, which I think is probably true. But it's not his centrism that is doing this. This is a completely partisan, ideological fight. He just wants to make sure that he's just kept out of the line of fire, basically. He doesn't care. He just wants to maintain his position. And the way he, I think, instinctually perceives it is, if I do nothing, I can do nothing wrong.
Well, ideology certainly plays a role in that, his entire worldview.
I guess. I think, like I say, you could be a centrist Democrat and say, I'm not going to let Donald Trump win. Harry Reid, I think he was probably to the left than most people understand when he left. But he was not, I don't know that his politics dramatically different in terms of ideology than Chuck Schumer's. Their voting records, I would bet, would be identical. But he believed you fight. That's the way that you win. Chuck Schumer, I think, is just like, well, I've got to argue that you don't necessarily need to fight to win. It just depends on how you define down winning.
Yeah, there are different flavors of centrist, for sure. Different tactics, different strategies. But you could not imagine a progressive Democrat behaving in this way.
No, because I think if you have an agenda, I think if you were a conservative Democrat, it's hard to imagine. Like, anybody with an agenda would do something. Like, I don't think that you championing bills about the legroom in coach. If you have
you flown anytime recently?
If you
smug prick.
If you have an agenda, you will fight for it. I just think that his agenda, and I think that includes conservative Democrats.
You could have segregationist
Democrats in there who would be like, we've got to fight.
It looks like your coupons have expired. But Chuck should have been fighting
an agenda.
So we can't protect Sam's coupons anymore.
And I would say that I don't care what happens to them, but we're going to get the wall first, so I kind of do.
The wall?
Never mind.
What do you mean?
Like, fascism. When fascism comes to power and all the liberals get murked.
I think she's saying that Pelosi and Schumer are collaborators, which I think they should prove the opposite if it's not true.
Exactly.
Well, I would agree with that. I just think that they're collaborating less because of some ideological perspective and more because they just care about their own position in their own little institution.
Are there telemarketers in your fascist system?
All right, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, Anthony Fantano, the needle drop. We are back. Sam Cedar on the Majority Report. On the phone, it's a pleasure to welcome to the program Anthony Fantano. He is the internet's busiest music nerd, obviously known for his YouTube channel at the Needle Drop. Anthony, welcome to the program.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. All right, well, this was very fortuitous because in addition to needing some help to expand my musical horizons, there is a musical controversy this week, which I could use some help on. Who is this Mr. Rocky that I keep hearing so much about?
ASAP Rocky?
ASAP Rocky. Why does he spell his first name with a line through the S? What's that about?
So many questions.
Well, ASAP does stand for it's a philosophy of his crew, the ASAP mob. It's always strive and prosper.
Oh,
and so that's sort of like their little motto, their acronym. So there are other members of the ASAP mob, like ASAP 12E, ASAP Ant. I'm sure you're also familiar with ASAP Ferg. He has a very good record called Trap Lord. I'm sure you've heard a couple of times.
You know, Anthony, it's a little embarrassing because Matt and I played all of these records when Sam did his divorce celebration party, but he doesn't remember any of them.
Yes, no, I was I preloaded and I was almost unconscious by the time I arrived at the party.
Yeah. Am I in the Uber? Yeah.
The Juno.
Oh, you're right. Exactly. The politically
so
correct
wait a second. So there was the Aspire What? I'm sorry. ASAP.
Always strive and prosper.
Always strive and prosper. Now, is this? And I assume the strive is to get some cash. But is this some type of like? Is there some greater ideology behind this? Is this like what is that? The prosper gospel?
They're just a rap collective.
Okay.
You know, not too much unlike the Wu-Tang Clan in some respects.
Okay, fair enough. And
obviously, very different style, very different sound, and everything. But they're a rap collective.
All right, and so Rocky from the Always Strive and Prosper crew. It's sort of like TYT, right? The Young Turks. Sort of everybody's like
yes, exactly.
TYT,
exactly.
Jank, and TYT. Okay, so Rocky heads over. Now, did Rocky head over? Now he's in Sweden. What did he head over Sweden with the whole crew?
To maybe make a bit of a cultural comparison here, it's just consistent branding, like with the Ramones. You have Johnny Ramone and Joey Ramone. You know, each one of them is a Ramone, just like each member of the ASAP mob is an ASAP. You know.
Okay, all right, fair enough. And so Rocky goes over. Do they travel together, or do they just over there? Is he just on vacation?
They're not always together all the time because there are quite a few members of the ASAP mob, but he most likely had some associates with him when he went over to do some performances. Yes.
Oh, okay. So there was it wasn't just vacation. He was over there, and they got into a fight. Now I've watched the video actually a couple of times. I know people are going to find this surprising, but I did watch the video, and it looked like there was some guys coming over just trying to be. I don't know. They were definitely being nuisances.
Sam was watching it. He was going, World Star.
That's right. I was yelling World Star. And, but tell us what happened.
I mean, for your characterization of the video, as far as, you know, my view of it is pretty accurate. You know, it's just sort of an unfortunate thing that I'll put it this way. There are a lot of rappers out there, and ASAP Rocky is definitely one of them who, you know, brag or talk tough in their music, which is not, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a long storied history of doing such things in hip hop. It's just kind of an established trope or norm at this point. But unfortunately, there are some people in the hip hop audience, I guess on the dumber side of the audience, who think that is like an invitation to test that person's toughness in real life if they happen to see them face to face. And that tends to, you know, lead to some scuffles, lead to some fights, lead to harassment, lead to negging and harassing and, you know, calling people out or whatever. And unfortunately, it sort of seems like that's what was happening in this moment. And ASAP Rocky, instead of turning the other cheek and just kind of going on about his day, probably just fed into it more than he needed to.
I mean, I think that happens with Michael, too, actually, when he's out and about. He's projecting all that image. And
I fed you the TYT joke, but I like that. I like the reversal.
They've got a reputation. I was there when the Vice Party turned violent with the ASAP mob.
Oh, is that right?
Back. Yeah, at South by Southwest. It was kind of nuts.
I mean, this is an old story, right? I mean, it happened even with, like, Houdini. Houdini would perform and always saying like how he could have people punch him in the stomach, and then somebody went up and did it when he wasn't looking, and then he ends up passing away because of it.
Yeah, it was exactly like that. Yeah,
that's what happened to Houdini.
I think it's very different, but that's pretty depressing.
Yeah. It's not that different. I mean, you project an image. You project an image, and you know, casual. You know, the civvy population.
I'm
wants
actually
to come
really
and test
appreciating some like odd-looking guys in Brooklyn going, "Can you do Nation of Islam Obama for me?" Sounds a lot nicer.
So, but this is where it starts getting weird. The Swedish officials charge ASAP Rocky and I imagine some of his crew that were with him with assault because he did beat up these guys, and then what happens?
Well, it seems like he's facing some pretty serious time now and a serious charge. And I think what I would like maybe for rappers to understand. And I'm not obviously an ambassador for the hip hop community or anything like that. But as the profile of hip hop has grown to such an international level, when these offers do occur where you can go overseas and you can perform, you have to understand that the judicial system over there, the racial biases that are over here also exist over there. And on top of that, I would say they exist doubly, because not only are they going to be treating you as a person of color, but they're going to be treating you as a foreigner as well. And I mean, there are already sorts of all kinds of biases against Americans in European countries. And not to say that some of them are unfounded, that we're rude, that we don't know how to handle ourselves, that, I mean, just generally anti-American sentiments of just Europeans being annoyed with us. And obviously those attitudes are going to be taken out in a place like the courtroom. And, so what I would try to argue is that, look, when you're over there, something like this does happen. It's not worth it. I mean, recently there was another video that came up of just this random European dude beating up, I guess one of the bodyguards of the rapper Future. And, unfortunately, this is just kind of like a nasty reality that I think some of these rappers are having to deal with. The idea of a rapper being jumped in public is nothing new. It's happened to some of the best of them, even voices like 2 Chainz. But I would say the dangers of responding to such an attack are even greater when you're in a country that's not your own.
Interesting.
Sidebar, 2 Chainz on Nancy Grace was the best thing ever, and I think we should all watch it today.
That was a very fun clip.
All right. Well, okay. So he's looking at some real time.
Well, he was in solitary confinement.
Oh, it's already.
It's already like over the past couple of weeks. It's already been an incredible, a pretty extravagant violation of his rights. And as an example, like in the UK a couple years ago, like there was something with Snoop Dogg and his and they let them out of the country. I mean, this is. I agree that this is a broader problem, but the Swedes have handled this in a pretty shockingly draconian way.
Well, it almost feels like Donald Trump decided to jump in on this and said, let's see how bad we can make this. So what happens? So Rocky's, facing severe jail time. And how does Donald Trump weigh in on this? I mean, I know what the theory is, that Donald Trump wants to show that he's actually a friend of black people.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we remember the first tweet that initiated this from all of him, we have to recall that that the message of this, according to Trump, came from Kanye. Kanye somehow got him on the phone, and Trump described the whole situation as Kanye says his friend ASAP Rocky, he's over there, and this needs to be handled. This needs to be taken care of, and the connection between Trump and Kanye is already something that the hip hop community is and has consistently been groaning over for a very long time. And even though there are people in the industry that would very much love to see Rocky free, because he's still a very popular artist who, if he continues to drop records, is set to continue making millions and millions of dollars and generate tons of money for the record label and other people in the industry. Most people in the hip hop community are looking at this quote unquote attempt by Donald Trump to get him out. They're looking at it very skeptically. They're seeing it as a transparent attempt to try to win them over, and they're not buying it as much as they would like for it to happen.
And I feel like on some level, it's not going to help Rocky to have Donald Trump publicly out there making it. Do you think it is going to?
Well, I mean, arguably there's been certain things like with the Pakistanis or even to some extent, I think something like this, when it's an incredibly low cost thing for them to do, to have him not be a relentless pain in the ass about other potentially larger things. Yeah, it could help. Yes.
Interesting.
I'll say that even a little bit of Trump pressure to try to get him out, I think, is better than absolutely no pressure whatsoever, which is essentially what was being applied before this. But given his track record of making deals, I don't think anybody is sort of really holding their breath on Trump, like, basically going full negotiator, or even like sending some, I don't know, some SEALs over there, Zero Dark 30 style, and like just breaking them out.
Did you see the latest tweet he sent out? He wrote, the first one is ridiculous, but I'll read the one that's just pretty funny. He wrote, give Aesop, which he spells correctly, by the way, Sam. Give Aesop.
With the dollar sign?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Give Aesop his freedom, all capitalized. We do so much for Sweden, but it doesn't seem to work the other way around. Sweden should focus on its real crime problem. # free Rocky.
Does he mean Muslims by that?
He's doing multiple. Yeah, he's doing multiple free Rocky hashtags.
Where's Nancy Pelosi on this?
Right.
I mean, actually, honestly, frankly, I don't know who A$AP Rocky's congressperson is, but where is A$AP Rocky's congressperson?
Well, I wonder if this hurts, like State Department actually going and saying, hey, like they would for any, private individual. I wonder if it hurts. Because the more, I think, sort of like publicity it gets, the more pressure it puts on the Swedes to actually not capitulate to Donald Trump, I would imagine. Right? I mean, that's... I
think the fact that he's kind of turning this into a media fiasco, it just kind of goes to show how unserious he is about the whole thing. Because the likelihood of it panning out the way that he wants in this very public way is just going to make Sweden look like they're caving in, looking weak. Whereas if these negotiations were quiet behind closed doors, and as you jokingly alluded to a little while ago, maybe send a congressperson over there or something, in a show of good faith, I feel like that approach would be more likely to get the outcome we want. But Donald Trump is unable to approach things in that manner.
Anthony, we're having a little bit of problems with your phone. If you shift back over to where you were leaning just moments ago.
I apologize.
Oh, now you're better. Now you're better. All right. Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see. I don't know. Personally, I think that if I had the opportunity to maybe Kanye, I would call up Kanye and say, dude, get your buddy to just back off a little bit, because I don't think I would hate to have my future tied to Donald Trump's in any way. That would be, I think, slightly problematic for most people. But all right, well, let's turn. I have a broad question before we get to my sort of my musical makeover a little bit, as it were.
Wow.
Where are we in terms of of music being political of the moment? I mean, I think in the context of rap and R&B, I think it's been political it's really been, it seems to me, largely I don't want to say the only source of political music, because I feel like during the Bush years, there was music that Bright Eyes and Dixie Chicks and Cowboy Junkies. I mean, I seem to remember some, things that were sort of overtly political. And I think obviously in rap...
We also had I don't know if Mike or Jamie remember these, but we also had the Fat Wreck Chords Rock Against Bush compilation.
Indeed.
Okay.
And also Green Day, American Idiot. You can't forget that.
Yeah,
I mean, during musical now.
Yeah, that album was so awesome. I listened every day.
Green Day was a little bit modern for me.
Yeah,
but
these guys are so cool.
But where are we now? Like, I don't feel like we have. I mean, I don't know. I don't pay attention to music enough as to what's good. But where are we on that? I imagine that's sort of like that cycle.
I think it's there and it's not. I mean, you have artists out there who have essentially made it their brand in a way to discuss social issues in their music, whether it be a Kendrick Lamar or a Childish Gambino. I mean, his song "This Is America" last year was my single of the year. So these issues are definitely being discussed by prominent musicians and artists and figures, but simultaneously, the music industry and music careers in general are so volatile, especially in the age of streaming, that most musicians don't want to take the risk to talk about issues that they think or that they know are important because they don't want to put themselves in a situation where they either say something that they get backlash for because, obviously all of them want to avoid the whole cancel culture thing, but simultaneously they don't want to risk their audiences tuning out, and they lose money, they lose their record deal. Because a lot of these artists, they aren't being signed for multi-album deals anymore. It's really just kind of like on a relevancy basis these days, because artists are fading in and out of the picture all the time, and trends are moving at the speed of light thanks to the internet. So as a result, again, I feel like a lot of artists, not only just politically, but also musically in a lot of respects, are just very risk averse.
How has the business of music changed in this era? Because it's funny because the only thing I have it to compare to is sort of the comedy world, and the comedy business has changed dramatically because of all this. Like, there's a lot more streaming services, so there's a lot more opportunity for work. You don't get these big paydays that we got back in the late 90s. Where it's like, hey, this is like winning the lottery, but the ability to make a decent middle class living seems much more within arm's reach, because you can monetize yourself online with like YouTube, or you can tour. There's just more ways to sort of like be entrepreneurial. What's happening in music in that respect?
I'll say generally, much of what you've just described in comedy has also occurred in music. I will add on top of that, what's also occurred is that the record labels for a long time, like, cried wolf over streaming and digital downloads, destroying the industry and ruining music, and this is going to be the end of the industry as we know it. But now, somehow, because obviously they've gamed the system and they have, worked out the kinds of deals that are preferable to them with streaming services, the major labels are now making billion-dollar profits and making record profits. So there is that. Simultaneously, it seems like, yes, there are more artists who are in the underground or relative underground that are making maybe more modest livings, but there are a lot of artists still in the underground that are struggling and can't really seem to get ahead, because there's really only a certain kind of song and format that works really well in the streaming age. You know what I mean? If you're an artist that writes, 20-minute long songs, or like long classical pieces, or really long ambient pieces, or something like that, the likelihood that you're going to make as much money as somebody who's like writing 12 3-minute pop songs and slapping them on a record is not likely, because you're getting paid per stream these days. So if you write really, experimental or long form music, you're kind of kneecapping yourself in a way.
So you don't get paid per minute?
No, you get paid per stream. That's why these days a lot of these rappers, that some of which we were talking about earlier, what they're doing these days, and this is kind of a weird, crazy incentive, they're dropping these like 90-minute, 45, 30-song projects that's just like one track after another that they're busting out in the studio, maybe spending 20 to 45 minutes on each track, because they know they're going to make more money if they put more songs to stream on a record, regardless of how they play together as an album.
That's sort of like the difference between me and Mark Maron. He's just basically playing to where the cash is, and I'm sorry, but that's fascinating. I mean, it's so. It's interesting. It's fascinating to see how the way things are monetized in a very sort of practical, sort of agnostic mechanisms implicate the art that gets created.
Yeah, and it's if we could go back and analyze it more thoroughly, it's probably always done that to some degree, but these are the noticeable ways in which I can, sort of recognize those changes happening, because I'm living through these changes and observing them from a point in time when streaming was not a thing, and to now where streaming is the dominant format through which young people, consume the music that they want to listen to.
So it's interesting that you say that politics haven't been real big in music because, I mean, I was always in more of the indie sphere, but I do still get some press emails from my previous life as a music journalist. And I feel like a lot of, at least indie artists, are trying to kind of cash in on this sudden resistance fervor that everybody's feeling right now in maybe kind of a, not shallow, but like a bit of a naive way, people who weren't really that political before.
Do you have an example? I mean, I could think of maybe a few. I mean, I really didn't like that weird Hillary song that like La Tigre came out with a little while ago. But
kill me.
Is there like another prominent example?
Sam like that, Anthony. So just be a little polite.
I mean,
I listen to that on a loop. That's my entire Spotify playlist.
Oh my God!
It's
I
not
gotta
necessarily
say,
that I like Hillary. Even it's just the spirit of the music.
I recently got a chance to see Bikini Kill play in Brooklyn, and I almost couldn't make myself go because La Tigre had released that "I'm with Her" video.
Yeah,
but I did go, and I enjoyed it very much.
That's sort of like my generation, right? I mean, is that what the problem is? My generation again.
I will say, I think, like, certainly in the punk world, people have been making some really great, I feel like Resistance has been ruined, but like Resistance art for quite some time now. And Zach Lipez has talked about this a lot too. You probably know him, Anthony. Like, the people who are doing well at it right now are the ones who have been doing it all along. And it's not just something that they've picked up. Like Downtown Boys, Priests, and Idols are three really good punk bands who have strong leftist political themes, and I really like them a lot.
Yeah, Joy as an Act of Resistance was one of my favorites of the year. I mean, punk music commenting on politics is just sort of a constant, no matter what political administration you're under, you know?
Yeah,
so that just kind of is what it is.
Right. That seems to be, I guess the question for me is like sort of popular music, like the music that my daughter listens to, which I don't know the names of any of the people. Like, I know the songs probably by heart now because they're constant, but I have no idea who sings them.
I mean, hey, Katy Perry was big on the Hillary train. That was the smartest thing she ever did in her feud with Taylor Swift, in my opinion.
I don't know if Miles...
I will say that it is kind of shocking, speaking of pop music and just popular artists, it is kind of shocking how down for Bernie Cardi B is, but I'm here for it.
Right.
So it
Cardi's
shouldn't
the
be
best
shocking,
we
is
have.
the thing, right?
Come on, we
she's
all know
a
how
working
great she is.
class woman of color. Well, she came from the working class. She's done really well for herself. She hasn't forgotten where she comes from. Like, she should be supporting Bernie.
But is there...
She also happens to be really...
But someone like Nicki Minaj comes from a lot of those same roots as well, and it seems like she couldn't give a crap.
Well, here's the difference: is Cardi B is actually just happens to be personally extremely politically and historically oriented,
and she happens
some
to be
of that is just
extremely
honestly
intelligent.
Her reading habits and what she's engaged in and interested in. I mean, that's also some of the luck of the draw.
That's also changed, right? Like, you don't necessarily have to manifest your politics through your music anymore because there's so many other channels in which to communicate that are no longer, that are just not as subsidiary as they used to be. I mean, if I was a musician 25 years ago, my fans would, maybe read about me in a fanzine or in Spin or Rolling Stone. And, every now and then I'd have an interview, but it was basically just the songs that I put out. Now you can have, as an artist, an ongoing conversation with your fans that has nothing really to do directly with your art.
No, that's true. I do think that the fact that artists do have access to such a convenient medium to tell their fans whatever they want, whenever they want, it does kind of allow them to, I guess, let off some steam or just let off some pressure on issues that they might have an opinion on. And this also manifests itself in hip hop in terms of just the trend or the history of diss tracks. Like, in hip hop right now, there aren't as many prominent or significant or important diss tracks as there used to be. There was just that Pusha T Drake beef, which was really significant. But part of the reason it was significant is that, sort of direct head-to-head, track-on-track, going at each other type of thing is not really as prominent a practice as it used to be. Now a lot of that steam is being let off on Instagram, where these guys are just like going at each other in one Instagram video after another.
I wish that Killer Mike would make a diss track about Joe Biden.
Oh, I also Vic Mensa's another guy. He's campaigning for Bernie, and he's done a lot of stuff in Chicago. That's another very prominent pop artist with a political orientation.
Yeah,
he was running
and he was on CYT recently too. He's always been pretty politically motivated.
Well, so
I don't know,
but let me ask you this: I mean, do you think that diminishes the work a little bit? Like, I mean,
an artist being politically active.
No, that we have these sort of like disposable ways in which an artist can communicate with its audience, so that it can relieve some of the those things that drive artists, and they don't necessarily have to put it in the work. They're sort of their primary art. I mean, I'm just thinking of myself back when I was in that sort of type of field where it was like I would do some sitcom work and needed to balance it out with, some stuff that I did on my own that I thought was, better. I don't know that it was or not, but my point is that for me as an artist to fulfill myself, I needed to do certain things and express certain things, and it would force me to do certain projects. Whereas we're living in a world now where, for musicians, they're trying to express feelings that they have through their music, right? I mean, that's what's definitional about them. But if they can actually let the air out of the tire in some areas, I wonder if that diminishes their work. I mean, what's your sense of that?
I think it does kind of loop back to the sentiment I expressed earlier about things being a little bit more sanitized and risk averse. And I think that social media, as you're kind of indicating here, does contribute to that in that if you really want to get a message out there, I could either A, put it in a song that for the health of my career, I need to hit, I need to chart, I need my audience to like it, but I don't know if they're going to want to hear this message. I could do it there, I could put it there, or I could put it in a tweet or in an Instagram update. And while, yeah, maybe in a sense we do lose the potential of, hey, we could have had a really great song about street violence or police brutality or a host of other things, simultaneously, writing songs about this stuff isn't always the most effective way to convey a message when at the end of the day, you don't just want people to hear a song, you want them to get the message. And I think social media and the fact that people can access really robust opinions on a lot of leftist issues is more significant to the political conversation than just merely being able to have maybe a hit or a popular song about a particular issue. Just for example, when I used to go to protests or, involve myself in leftist groups when I was in high school or in college, the kinds of conversations that just people like AOC or Bernie have brought to the fold now is really only the types of conversations I would hear there. Now those conversations are kind of being had everywhere. You have half of the Democratic field right now copying that stuff. And that's thanks to the discussion that the internet is allowing, not because, a song has kind of opened people up to the idea. I mean, music and the political messages it can convey are important. And, a lot of the records that I tend to praise year in and year out do have like a political or a social angle or a message. I mean, I praise that. I love that. I celebrate that. But, it's not like a make or break for music in my view. It doesn't dictate whether or not music is actually good. And the artists who really kind of have a message in their heart that they have to get out there that does have a social edge to it, they're going to communicate it in their music, whether it's going to sell or not. Like Jamie said earlier, the band Idols, they were making the kind of music and conveying the kind of messages that they were before they were a popular band. You know what I mean? And if that's what you're going to do, that's what you're going to do consistently, whether you're successful with it or not.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't really occurred to me, but years back I had several conversations with Fran Lebowitz where she was insistent that that political change has got to come from cultural sources like musicians and whatnot, and she was not seeing it. And I wonder, she also was at least at that time, and I imagine this has continued, extremely reluctant to engage in any technology. And I wonder if social media has now rather than draining from music its political import, has just simply expanded upon what an artist puts out there, and is just is sort of an adjacent medium to influence politics, because social media, I mean, clearly is a part of our culture, and I guess things have gotten much more political. I'm not, it's hard to sort of read as to what would have happened if Hillary Clinton was in office. Would we continue to have this level or a significant increase in the sort of politicization that we see amongst artists?
I'll add to your friend's description of politics and music and the relation to culture by saying, yes, politics is certainly downstream from culture, and I will agree that music itself is culture, but generally I would separate music itself from popular or commercial music, especially music coming out on major labels, because there are so many degrees of separation between the rawness of what your average person is thinking and a hit record that may have been combed through dozens of times before it actually ended up seeing release. I would argue that commercial music is downstream from culture as well. In a lot of respects, commercial music is a reflection of what the public wants, because what does and doesn't land on the chart and what is or isn't being released on commercial labels is a reflection of, trends and, consumer trends that labels are keeping track of every single day.
I've had this argument with people a bunch of times because, I really hate, well, I don't hate all of it, but corporate pop music is not my thing. And, there are people who think if you don't like the kind of music, the kind of commercial pop that's crammed down the throat of, teenage girls, that you're somehow, sexist and ageist. And
no, you're just not with it.
I can't imagine, I would rather the industry respect teenage girls enough to give them something to listen to that's not total garbage.
Oh, teenage girls want to listen to Tracy Chapman. Yeah, sure. Whatever. Keep up with the cool music.
It is.
The kids like the cool stuff.
I'm going to enjoy this moment where I'm a little bit hipper than Jamie about what's going on in the young teenage girl music
Force
scene.
15-year-olds.
All right, but wait a second. That brings up the point here. Let's get down to brass tacks, Anthony. I need to impress folks when I go out and about. I don't want to say my dating pool, but I need to go out and impress people with my musical acumen. But I have a limited, narrow perspective on what I like, and I think Brendan has, given you a sense of what that was as part of our pre-interview process that we do around here. So what do you recommend that I could listen to that would project someone who is not so stuck in, mired in the music that was formative for him? Or is that impossible?
I could throw some real hip stuff at you that maybe you wouldn't vibe with if you really just want to.
Well, I can pretend that I'm vibing with it. I mean, I'm capable.
Yeah, listen to the new, listen to the new Tyler the Creator album, Igor. That would be really hip of you.
Wait a second. Why is everyone laughing?
If all you want to do is be hip and be relevant, just listen to the Tyler the Creator album, Igor, and it's a good breakup. It's a good breakup record too. So.
Tyler Creator.
Right. Big Sean also has a good breakup.
Is that Tyler Creator? Is that his last name, or is it Tyler the Creator? Is his last name?
It's just Tyler the Creator.
Okay.
It's just a stage name.
It's a come after Tyler.
Now let's say I want to take it down a notch and not be so hip, but maybe I want to just be able to listen to the music without having to sort of consciously project that I like it.
Yeah, I think, given some of the stuff Ben told me in an email before the
why did
interview,
you laugh when you said that? I'm stuck in sort of 90s. I mean, my musical tastes started, I think I started to engage in music when I was in 7th grade, which started with Velvet Underground. And I think ended probably when I was like, I stopped seeing shows more or less in my early 30s. And so more or less ended with like Velvet Underground. And
I have a solid recommendation for you.
What's that?
I would recommend that you maybe try out the new album from Purple Mountains. Have you heard of this record?
Oh, Brendan's very upset because that's what he told me too. The new Purple Mountains. Okay.
Yeah, Purple Mountains. It's self-titled. It's a band led by a singer-songwriter whose name is David Berman, and he used to be in a group named Silver Jews, who I don't know. I mean, being a '90s dude, have you heard of them before?
We were just talking about them the other day. I didn't really know them that well. No.
Yeah, they're more on the obscure side. They're kind of like a lo-fi indie rock and folk group. David tends to write these songs that are very dry, very witty, very wordy, very I guess a lot of observational humor in some of his lyrics as well. And I believe Stephen Malkmus from Pavement was affiliated with Silver Jews for a little bit as well. So there's, kind of that deep '90s indie rock, lo-fi kind of connection there.
Anthony.
But
I may be a little bit like earlier than that. Like maybe the album I've probably listened to more in my entire life, and I still listen to it, would be "Let It Be" by The Replacements. That's basically it. Like I still listen to that album on a regular basis when I can't think of anything else to listen to.
I can't think of any rock bands like that have come out with records this year. They're like really embodying that Replacements-esque kind of vibe. And the Replacements are such a unique group because they were just like so on. Really in a lot of respects, they're kind of like proto-alternative rock. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's like they were sort of like in a weird creative limbo period where they were on the cusp of something that developed into something else. You know what I mean? But still, given that you are into some of the artists that Ben told me about, I do think you will dig that Purple Mountains record. I think you might also like the new Bill Callahan record. It's a really good singer-songwriter album.
Bill Callahan, yep.
And also an Australian singer-songwriter just came out with this really great covers album that I personally think is amazing. It's called Return to Center, and his name is Kieran J. Callanan.
Okay. Return to Center.
Oh, I saw him once.
Anthony, Anthony, I'm sorry. There's something that's been bugging a lot of us for a long time. Sam is a pure '90s thing. Claims to not know Ace of Bases. Do you believe that?
That's kind of hard to believe. That's sort of like not knowing what Savage Garden is, if you're kind of like a '90s person.
Who's Savage Gardens?
We've been playing this game for a while.
Yeah, no, I thought Ace of Base was that the white rapper guy, like those guys.
Oh, I thought it was Snow.
No, not Snow. I can't remember. Third base. I knew.
Yeah, that's the Ace of Base. All that she wants is another baby. You know that song?
I never heard that.
Nothing.
What about I? Okay,
honestly,
it's not a big deal.
Don't bother, man. Trust me, we've been down this road.
Yeah.
Well, again, the Kieran J. Callanan record is.
Oh, I know that song.
Well, I've got that down. So right now I'm doing Tyler, the Creator, if I need to really get out, and Purple Mountains, and Return to the Center. The Bill Callahan thing I already have. So that's pretty good.
Yeah. If you get to the end and you want more, it's always a good idea to listen to Death Grips. Just saying.
Death Grips.
I
have a few recommendations for everybody else. I have Michael needs to listen to the new Freddie Gibbs and Madlib.
Freddie Gibbs and Madlib. Okay.
Yeah, you got to listen to that if you haven't already. Jamie, I don't know if you've listened to Drab Majesty yet.
Oh yes.
Yes, their new record's good. Also, have you heard the new Black Midi record, Schoggenheim?
No.
They're like a really good kind of dark post-punky math rock band from the UK.
That sounds good.
And I know math rock's kind of annoying to some people, but this is totally different.
Cool, I'll check it out.
And also, you probably already heard this, but have you listened to the new Lingua Ignota record yet?
No, but you are not the first person who's told me to listen to it.
you have to listen to it. It's like insane.
Hell
and
yeah. Man,
Matt, I saw on.
I'm so out of the
Go
loop
on.
with music these days. I used to be a music writer, and now I just listen to podcasts because politics have completely broken my brain. And so I rely on my friends and folks like you to tell me what to listen to now. So thank you.
Yes, listen to the new lingua ignota Caligula. It's pretty intense. Matt, I saw did a tweet about moshing in Pelosi's office, so I just got together some records he can mosh to.
Okay.
It's not new, but it's a really good record. Power Trip, Nightmare Logic. It's a really good thrash metal record. The new Tomb Mold album, Planetary Clairvoyance, is a really badass death metal record with a lot of great riffs on it. And this Japanese band called Otoboke Beaver, Itakoma Hits. It's like this really great noise pop and experimental punk record with a lot of shouty like female gang choruses. They sort of sound like a cross between a speedy punk band and like a Japanese cheerleader group.
Ooh.
And Ben
Sounds
needs
real good.
to keep streaming Lil Nas's.
Brendan,
keep streaming Lil Nas X's Old Town Road so that it's number one and it continues to be the longest running number one single of all time.
Oh,
so
hell
that's my
yeah.
last
Hard cosign on that.
And just to be clear before I let you go, Anthony, Bono is not dead. Is that right?
Bono's alive.
Okay.
Michael Stipe is still alive. Moby is still alive.
We interviewed Michael Stipe back in the day on the Majority Report. Yeah, he came in. He was friends with Janine.
That's a big one.
And I saw them. They played my spring fling at college back when they were just coming from Athens.
No, stop it.
Oh my God, losing my religion.
It makes me angry.
That would have been before losing my religion, right?
Oh yeah, no. This was. This was when they were just touring band playing colleges.
I thought that was the only song they
in
did.
1980. This was like 86, I think they came.
Yeah, that would have been their first couple of records, and they were just sort of considered a college rock band.
Exactly. That's basically it. That's the wheelhouse. Well, Anthony, this has been a pleasure. I really appreciate it, man. Folks can check out, can find you on the Needle Drop at any time, apparently.
At any time. It's the YouTube channel runs 24 hours a day.
There you go. That's pretty good. Good job with that, incidentally. We got to figure out how to do that with ours. Anthony, thanks so much. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, folks. We got a little bit of time for the fun half. We're going to take a quick break, head into that fun half. Just a reminder, you can support this program by becoming a member, by going to Join the Majority Report. There, you will have the opportunity to become a member of the program for just pennies a day. Pennies. I mean, that's a very wide open amount of pennies. It's plural.
The most versatile currency.
Exactly. You can get it. You can get super granular with pennies. And for just pennies a day, we give you extra content every day. And you support this program, and you get it all commercial free. JoinTheMajorityReport.com. Don't forget to listen to the AM Quickie. It's on your Majority Report feed, the audio feed. You can check it out. Also, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code MAJORITY. As always, you can always check our show notes for any type of coupon deals or discounts that we get from our advertisers. Today is Friday, which means that Tuesday is some other day. It either happened or will happen. Michael.
We had on, we had on Crystal Ball. We talked about the anti-Bernie bias, MSNBC, and the professionalization of the Democratic Party and why that makes them such wuss bags. Then Joshua Kahn, who is...
He's the guru.
He's the guru. He's a frontline organizer. We did our second lessons in the actual tactics of movement building, activism. He told some incredible stories, including from work they did in Arpaio's, Arizona, which is the prototype of what's happening nationally in terms of anti-ICE and detention actions. Really quick, we're doing obviously a Monday show because we have two debates, Tuesday and Wednesday night. So TMBS will be Monday at 7. Brooke Thomas from TYT, and then I just recorded an interview with Celso Amorim, who is Lula's foreign minister and Dilma's defense minister, and he has a lot of thoughts on the rise of the global far right and what the political strategy is to synchronize against it, and insight as to what's happening in Brazil right now. So patreon.com/TMBS, Michael Brooks Show on YouTube.
Jamie.
This week on the Antifada, we had on Cinzia Arruzza and Tithi Bhattacharya, two authors of Feminism for the 99%, a manifesto, to talk about feminism in all its current forms, a topic very near and dear to my heart, and why, if we're going to be truly feminist, we also have to be anti-racist and anti-capitalist, and why that's all connected. And I'm really stoked on this episode, and I hope everybody listens to it. We also poured one out for Aussie Fest, which was sadly canceled this past weekend. Boo hoo.
What? Aussie Fest was canceled?
Oh, you didn't hear that? De Blasio canceled it because Beto was going to be there. Or
if De Blasio actually, if he was just like,
they
I heard
canceled
that
Aussie Fest.
If De Blasio was like,
you know what that sounds like? You know what that sounds like to me? Ticket sales sucked, and we need an excuse.
That sounds to me like De Blasio's getting serious. Make Con Ed public.
It's going to be traffic problems.
So wait, did De Blasio cancel it?
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually did. He said it was because of the heat. It would be a public health danger.
I had no...
And really, it was just like, I heard that little bitch Beto's coming to my city.
Also,
I put a ratio on Twitter
they were commandeering a public park for, I believe, 9 days beforehand to set it up. So that rubbed some people the wrong way.
Oh, yeah.
You know, I
Death
hear
to
those
Aussie Fest.
ads on the radio for Aussie, for that site. And that is just like, how much money...
It's a corporate psyop.
...do they have?
Too much.
It's honestly like, I didn't hear about it. They've been around for like 5 or 6 years, right?
Yeah.
I didn't hear about it until you went last year. And then like I start to hear the ads, and it's always this like, how many pancakes does Japan put out every year? Find out facts like this and more on Aussie Reports. It's news you can use. And it's just like weird, sort of like really clever, you know.
It's just noise.
Contrarian,
it's corporate noise.
Sort of like factoids.
It's a lost leader for neoliberalism, I would say.
I guess.
You basically just need to use people's time while they continue to consume.
It's stunning. The like what passed as news, like, you know, like what. Did you know the number one import of Canada is not, you know, the export of Canada is not maple syrup? It's just like weird. I don't know.
Yeah, before I found out that it was de Blasio who canceled it, I just figured that the festival had, you know, read my piece from last year and taken my critiques to heart and thought about their life and thought about their choices and packed it in.
Just sounds to me like there was no ticket sales, and they just went to de Blasio and said, cancel it on us.
And he was just like, why would I do that? You invited Beto O'Rourke.
Right.
I'm candidate de Blasio, which means all of a sudden I'm not a weird beanstalk guy. I actually have some balls.
Exactly.
To be fair, it was incredibly hot last weekend, but I like your theories better.
Saturday, Literary Hangover. We're doing The Pioneers, part 1 of 2-part episode, because this is a really rich book, basically about how commodification is a necessity before people will allow settlers to settle new land. Basically, yeah, James from Mark Cooper, check it out. So first of the Leatherstocking Tales. So if you're familiar with The Last of the Mohicans, this is a better book than that one is.
All right, folks. See you in the fun half. All right, folks. See you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Anarchy. Alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you can imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boys back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Almost says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
bring back DJ Danergy's song, please?
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danergy.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense.
Hey, folks, reminder.
I do not have Parkinson's.
And the alpha males are
Psych. Fuck them. Fuck them.
Homo says what?
what?
Homo says what?
Hell of a lot of bank. 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 Hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
and the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on. Fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are back. Africans are black.
Come on. What? Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Ah, God.